Why God is at last balancing the scales. The foretelling of heavenly righteousness. Imagine if I revealed that the architect of all existence is orchestrating a pivotal act of sacred reckoning against those who have subjugated a whole population for half a millennium. What if your understanding of the scriptures, of the past, and of ethnicity was rooted in distortions crafted to uphold hierarchies and conceal reality? This isn't mere speculation. This is foreordained revelation, etched plainly in holy texts, yet disregarded or concealed from the masses. The concealed narratives of the Bible. Let me pose another query. Why was it omitted from your education that when Miriam challenged Moses for wedding a lady from Cush, the Lord afflicted her instantly with a skin disease, rendering her flesh as pale as frost? Why did your religious classes gloss over that account in Numbers 12, verses 1 through 10, which underscores the Almighty's endorsement of cross-cultural unions? Might it be due to how that single tale undermines ages of skewed explanations? The indicators of our era. Here's what I've discerned. Omens are manifesting everywhere at this very moment. We're inhabiting the precise epoch that Daniel envisioned, that Christ cautioned of, that seers beheld in dreams millennia past. The era of sacred reckoning isn't approaching in some remote tomorrow. It's upon us. It's immediate. And if you assume this is merely another discussion on societal equity or activist causes, you're overlooking the essence. This concerns heavenly equity. This involves the deity of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, rectifying scores with a society that has twisted his message, dismissed his verity, and suppressed his followers. The vow of renewal. Once you've absorbed this presentation, your view of the Bible will be forever altered. Your perspective on the past will shift. For the revelations I'm unveiling will overhaul all your prior assumptions, so allow me to clarify the proceedings. Over the coming hour, I'll present 7 undeniable proofs drawn directly from Holy Writ, demonstrating that the divine has perpetually aligned with the downtrodden, that he has consistently safeguarded the sidelined, and that he is gearing up retribution for those who have warped his teachings to rationalize wickedness. The core role of African heritage. I'll illustrate that the African element in the scriptures isn't peripheral. It's integral to the full arc of salvation. And I'll demonstrate that renewal isn't vengeance. It's equity, scriptural equity ordained from the world's inception. Every regime that defied the divine's tenets has crumbled. Egypt collapsed, Babylon tumbled, Rome disintegrated, and any framework erected on deceit and tyranny will shatter, as that's the biblical archetype. That's the assurance of the eternal God. The intent behind this discourse. If this content unsettles you, excellent. Verity is meant to unsettle the complacent and soothe the afflicted. If it provokes fury in you, all the better. That rage could awaken you to actuality. Now, grasp this vital point. This isn't aimed at fracturing societies. This isn't fostering additional animosity in a fractured globe. Every individual on earth, irrespective of pigmentation, is fashioned in the divine's likeness. We're all progeny of the identical primordial humans who emerged from Africa. We're all kin, like it or not. Reinstating the bedrock. Yet here's the issue. For 5 centuries, a regime was constructed on the falsehood that certain individuals surpass others due to skin pigment levels. And that regime exploited the Bible, distorted and abused it, to validate unimaginable atrocities. Thus, this presentation seeks to reinstate verity. Not personal verity, not societal verity, but the verity inscribed in holy texts, corroborated by chronicles, affirmed by research, and manifesting presently in ongoing affairs. This is about dismantling fabrications and reconstructing upon what the divine truly declared, not what ecclesiastical bodies proclaimed. Are you prepared? For once perceived, it can't be unseen. Once comprehended, it can't be unlearned. And once verity liberates you, you're obligated to disseminate it. The blueprint of validation. So let's proceed. In the ensuing 60 minutes, I'll substantiate something that will rattle the pillars of all you learned in worship halls, classrooms, and communities. I'll substantiate that the Omnipotent has eternally supported the subjugated, and that he has documented his advocacy for African descendants across Holy Writ in manners intentionally obscured, mistranslated, and overlooked for eras. Here's my commitment to you. First, I'll demonstrate that humanity's entirety stemmed from African individuals, with Genesis affirming this. Second, I'll verify that Moses, the paramount seer, wed an African woman, and that the divine penalized his sibling for denouncing that union with a severe affliction as noted in Numbers 12. Third, you'll uncover that Ethiopia, realm of African blacks, was granted a distinct prophetic assurance in Psalm 68:31 that has upheld the downtrodden for ages. Fourth, I'll link the Exodus narrative, the bondage and emancipation of Israel, to the 400-year bondage of Africans in the Americas, revealing why that similarity isn't accidental. Fifth, you'll observe Christ himself aligned with the destitute, the subjugated, and the excluded, rendering black theology not extremist, but scriptural. Sixth, I'll instruct on Mishpat, the Hebrew term for equity, signifying restoration, and its relevance to contemporary demands for compensation. Seventh, I'll reveal the prophetic omens from Daniel, Matthew, and Revelation, confirming we're in the final days, with heavenly equity poised for worldwide enactment. The obliteration of history. But it extends further. I'll guide you through the chronicled methods by which this verity was interred. I'll identify the establishments, the tenets, the statutes, the figures, and purposefully expunged African inputs from scriptural and global annals. You'll grasp how the Ham curse theory was concocted to sanction enslavement, despite its absence in the Bible. You'll uncover how Renaissance creators in Europe rendered all scriptural personas as pale, though they resided in the Near East and Africa. You'll perceive how instructional frameworks were engineered to assert that pale males pioneered, innovated, and achieved all, when digs refute that entirely. Reclaiming identity, and once you comprehend the fabrication of the deception and its necessity for oppressive structures, I'll address something paramount. I'll reveal your true essence, not a casualty, not offspring of bondsmen, but lineage of monarchs, constructors, fighters, intellectuals, lineage of survivors of the transatlantic voyage, of 400 years of institutionalized degradation, who forged national riches empty-handed and gained naught. The ancestral and chronicled lineage. I'll demonstrate that your genes harbor recollections of Earth's inaugural females. I'll prove your forebears' brilliance is incontrovertible. The stoplight ensuring safety, devised by Garrett Morgan, an African-American. The technique enabling contemporary footwear, created by Jan Ernst Matzeliger, an African-American. The blood storage method saving countless lives, established by Dr. Charles Drew, an African-American. These are merely recent instances. Delve deeper to Egypt's structural mastery, Timbuktu's antique academies, Mali's opulence, Kushite fighters' tactical skill. This is your inheritance. This is what was plundered via torched repositories, revised manuals, and doctrines that your saga commenced in shackles. It didn't. It began in splendor and will conclude in splendor, as the divine vowed, as prophecy proclaims. The repercussions of verity. Thus, here's the outcome of viewing this. You'll be altered. Ignorance is irretrievable post-revelation. You'll feel rage, yes, but it'll morph into strength. You'll experience sorrow, yes, but it'll propel your resolve to ensure no future cohort matures ignorant of their identity. An appeal for bravery. And for viewers profiting from privileged edifices on deceptions, you'll confront a decision. Dismiss this verity. Defend yourself. Exit. Label it separatist or extreme. Or muster valor to confront chronicles candidly. Acknowledge that the Christ you profess, allied with the subjugated, rebuked pious frauds, and assured the lowly will ascend, while the exalted descend. This isn't guilt-mongering. This isn't faulting persons for ancestral transgressions. This is demolishing ongoing deceptive mechanisms. This is toppling bogus icons, including the whiteness cult, fabricated 500 years back, and venerated thence. This is reverting to scriptural doctrines. The divine is impartial, evaluates hearts, and mandates equity, not benevolence, for the plundered. Africa's Genesis. The moment has arrived. The hush has persisted overly long. The falsehoods shielded sufficiently, and the equity deity, who heeded Israel's lament in Egypt, Hagar's in the desert, bondsmen's hymns in fields, that identical deity is set to respond. Not with hints, not motivational sayings, but with the might that submerged Pharaoh's forces, raised Jericho's barriers, resurrected Christ. It's equity's restoration time. Not from our insistence, but his pledge, and he honors vows. The empirical and scriptural evidence. Let's commence at the base. Validation 1. All humans derive from African blacks, with the Bible endorsing this empirical truth. I recognize some discomfort arising. You learned race is innate, peoples eternally segmented, this natural. That's falsehood, provable otherwise. Contemporary heredity traces origins to sub-Saharan Africa circa 300,000 years ago. Oldest Homo sapiens remains in Morocco at 300,000 years. Initial moderns were African females. All living persons, regardless of appearance, bear those primal African matriarchs' genetic imprint. This isn't debated in science, it's fact. The nation's lineage, but don't rely solely on experts. Consult Genesis 10, the nation's table, Noah's sons post-deluge descent, Ham fathers Cush, Ethiopia, Sudan, also Mizraim, Egypt, Canaan, Put, all African lineages. Notably, the Bible notes civilization's reboot via Noah's trio sons, one full branch from Ham, African nation's progenitor. Refuting Ham's curse. For ages, bigoted divinity exploited this to rationalize bondage via a invented Ham curse. They claimed Noah doomed Ham and offspring to eternal servitude. But text refutes. Genesis 9:20-27 shows Noah cursing Canaan, Ham's one son, not all. Fulfilled via Israel's Canaan conquest under Joshua, unrelated to Africa, pigmentation, American bondage. That dogma emerged 15th century for biblical pretext to abduct, enslave, slaughter millions of Africans. It clashed with scriptural equality per Galatians 3:28. Reiterating, the Ham curse preached in Euro-American sanctuaries for centuries is utter scriptural perversion for fiscal gain. It's grievous misreading, a scriptural betrayal. Every cleric, scholar, entity promulgating that falsehood shares blame for inflicted damage. The symbolism of authority. Consider, if humans originated African, Bible affirms Africans central to nation's descent. Why 500 years of artwork portraying biblical icons as pale Europeans? Why Christ with fair locks, azure eyes, though a Near Eastern Jew with dark complexion, hair, regional traits? Answer, image control equals narrative control. Depict God resembling you, elect resembling you, faith heroes resembling you, claim celestial entitlement for supremacy. But verity endured. Despite efforts, Bible teems with Africans. Not figuratively, literally. We'll examine sequentially. The Cushite spouse, validation 2, Moses wed a Cushite African woman. When kinfolk faulted the union, the divine smote Miriam with a dermal affliction. Numbers 12:1 states, Miriam Aaron opposed Moses over the Cushite wife he'd wed. Cush, Ethiopia, Sudan, Black Africa. Moses, God's direct interlocutor, Israel's liberator, commandments recipient, wed a black African. Divine swift retort. Intriguingly, Miriam, Aaron, Moses' kin, objected. Text omits explicit motive, but context implies racial bias. God's action, verse 4. Abruptly Lord summoned Moses, Aaron, Miriam to meeting tent. They complied. Verse 9, Lord's wrath ignited. He withdrew. Cloud lifted. Miriam leprous, snowy white. Ironic retribution. Pause. Snow-like, frosty pale. Note ironic equity. Miriam faulting Moses' black spouse, afflicted with pallor-inducing malady. The divine asserts the black life's worth, dignity by this precise penalty. Aaron frets, implores Moses' mediation. Gracious Moses petitions, "O God, heal her." God does. Post 7-day camp exclusion, national humiliation. The tale's concealment. Query, why no homily on this? Why Sunday school omission? Why many believers unaware? Because it assaults Western Christianity's racial superiority scaffold. If divine defended a black woman, penalized racial bias, every bondage, segregation, systemic bias rationale crumbles. This loan account should have averted 500 years' terror. Instead, interred, disregarded, bypassed, rationalized, millions agonized as faith leaders favored cultural biases over explicit scriptural doctrine. Moses' African milieu. Moses' black ties extended beyond spouse, raised Egyptian, Pharaoh's court, New Kingdom Egypt, black African society, Pharaohs, clergy, Moses' upbringing peers, black Africans. Fleeing to Midian, still dark-skinned zones. Notion Moses in pale world, wedding one black, ludicrous. Moses dwelt, labored, revered amid Africans lifelong. Psalm 68:31 sustenance. Validation 3. Psalm 68:31 holds prophetic vow for Ethiopia, buoying subjugated for millennia. Verse. Envoys from Egypt arrive, Cush hastens hands to God. Vow. African peoples approach God. Extend to him, accepted. The bondsman's hymn. For American enslaved Africans, verse wasn't whimsy. Lifeline. Proof God remembered. Evidence their essence, legacy, biblical God tie indelible, oppression proof. Hymns, covert sermons referenced it. Whispered amid despair. Remarkably, fulfilled now. African faith surge. Christianity booms Africa-wide. Over 734 million adherents, 2024. 31% growth, 2010-2020. Swiftest expansions, Nigeria, Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda. African divines yield potent scriptural studies. African evangelists dispatched to Europe, America, rekindling lapsed faiths. Ethiopia, ancient Christian land, safeguarded lost Western manuscripts, traditions. Vow realizes, Africa extends to God. He replies potently. But Western outlets Christianity often overlook diminish African devotion, voices. The 400-year pattern. Validation 4. Exodus's 400-year bondage, wondrous freedom, mirrors Africans' 400-year American servitude. Genesis 15. God covenants Abraham. Verse 13. Your seed sojourns alien land, serves, afflicted 400 years. I'll judge that nation. They exit with vast goods. Bondage, oppressor judgment, compensated freedom. Exodus model. American Chronicle. View U.S. past. First Africans landed Jamestown 1619. Emancipation 1863. 244 legal bondage years. But 1619 to 2019, including Jim Crow 1872 to 1962 segregation, incarceration, systemic tyranny, 400 years. Not chance. Enslaved Africans self-identified in Exodus. Sang Go Down Moses, demanding Pharaoh release. New Egypt hearing God heard field quarter cries. Reparations mandate. Profoundly, as God plagued Egypt, drowned Pharaoh's host, he vows judgment on enslavers' oppressors. Exodus 3:21. God to Moses, grant people Egyptian favor, depart not bare. Women request neighbor silver gold. Reparations, divine ordered labor compensation. Deuteronomy 15:12-15 echoes, Hebrew slave served 6 years, 7th freed, not empty. Supplied generously from flock, floor, press. As God blessed you, give. Scriptural equity demands compensation, not alms. Judgment query. This prompts sober scriptural reflection. Is God judged Egypt for Israel's bondage? His view on African enslaving nations. If Deuteronomy demands Hebrew slave reparations, not for Africans, if plagues destruction on Egypt, similar cycles recur, not claiming precise schedule method. Biblical model clear. Oppression yields judgment. Injustice yields ruin. God sides with subjugated. The outcast redeemer. Validation 5. Christ aligned with impoverished, subjugated, excluded, divine of systemic sufferers. Christ's birth, no palace, stable. Parents destitute, offered doves. Raised Nazareth, Nazareth good, ministry, fishers, collectors, harlots, lepers, Samaritans, Gentiles. Touched unclean, dined sinners, uplifted women, defended needy. Luke 4 mission, Lord's Spirit on me for captive freedom, oppressed release. Slaves demise, arrested politically, scourged, derided, disrobed, crucified, slave penalty. Divinity and Africanness. Black divinity posits God identifies oppression, takes sides with widow, mendicant, alien, subjugated. Christ's message revolutionary, not tame. If Christ unchanged, he sides with subjugated today. Mishpat's essence. Validation 6. Scriptural equity. Hebrew mishpat means oppressed restoration, not mere wrongdoer penalty. Backs modern compensation calls. English justice evokes courts, penalty, order. Mishpat broader. Righting wrongs, restoring stolen, elevating downtrodden, mending broken, restorative equity. Compensation versus desertion. Revisit Deuteronomy 15:12-15. Free Hebrew slave not bear, supply liberally. Why? Earned via work, you profited. Equity demands pay, not mere liberty. Resourceless freedom, abandonment. Post-U.S. slavery, freed told free, given zilch, no land, funds, tools, learning, 244-year labor pay. 40 acres/mule, vowed, reneged, per records. Compensations inequity. Freed navigated hating society. Ex-enslavers compensated. British post-slavery paid owners £20 million, 40% treasury income, some till 2015. Owners, not slaves, got reparations. Contrast, Exodus 12:35. Israel departed wealthy, 400-year pay, biblical equity, Mishpat. Intergenerational disparity. Some think, ancient. Why pay ancestral deeds? Because effects linger. Wealth hereditary. One group accrues 400 years, other barred via slavery, Jim Crow, 1932-1962 redlining, bias loans, incarceration. Gap indoors. Pew 2023. White median wealth, 250K, versus black 27K. Direct stolen labor opportunity legacy centuries back. Restitution as redemption. Reparations repair broken systems, not guilt. Follow Mishpat. Benefit from injustice, even inherited. Rectify. Leviticus 6. Theft fraud restitution plus 20%. Luke 19. Zacchaeus. Restore fourfold. Jesus, salvation here today. Redemption, equity linked. Can't follow Christ ignoring equity demands. Era's labor pains. Validation 7. Daniel, Matthew, Revelation, omens signal end times, God's ultimate judgment, perhaps mirroring current world, prompting contemplation. Not date setting, but signs Christ listed more apparent now than ever. Matthew 24. Nations versus nations, famines, quakes diversely, these birth pangs start. Contemporary proof, observe wars, rumors, check. Quakes, rising frequency, strength, check. Famines via climate, strife, collapse, check. Faith persecuted Christians, check. Deceivers misleading, check. Lawlessness surging, love cooling, check. Insight in movement. Daniel 12:4, many dash about, knowledge multiplies. Most mobile era, annual travel exceeds ancients' lifetimes. Knowledge boom, fingertip info surpasses prior eras. Modern unique. Matthew 24:22 chilling, days shortened or no survival. Christ depicts self-annihilation capacity. Impossible pre-1945 nukes. First total life end tech. Prophetic omen. Digital regime and Babylon's demise. Revelation 13. Buy, sell, barred, sans mark. Not claiming exact, but nearer cashless tracked transactions. Biometrics, chips, digital money exist. Tech matches 2,000-year foretelling. Linking to equity. Revelation 18. Babylon fall. Verses 11-13. Merchandise ends, slaves, human souls. End time anti-God system on trafficking, exploitation. Restoration's assurance. But Revelation 21. New heaven earth. God wipes tears. No death, mourning, pain. Nations by God's city light. Tree leaves heal nations. Equity fully. Oppression ends. Wrongs righted. Promise, hope. Believers pursue equity sans despair. No ending. God triumphs. Equity triumphs. Verity triumphs. Every knee bows. Tongue confesses Christ Lord. Not forced, but his goodness, mercy, equity, undeniable. Thus, viewing events, justice movements rising, oppression challenged, truth voiced where silenced, not mere politics, society. Prophetic unfolding, God's realm invading broken world. We participate, choosing justice or complicity. Bible's diverse actuality, post-7 scriptural, chronicled, empirical, prophetic validations, grasp historical path erasing African biblical presence, civilizational inputs. Biblical era, Abraham, Moses, seers, Christ, apostles, world multicultural, Mediterranean, Near East, North Africa centered. Varied tones, dark to olive to light brown. All white Bible, impossible geographically, historically. Europe Christian hub, post-Christ centuries. African civilizational base, ancient Egypt, much Old Testament setting, African from approximately 3000 BCE, Pharaoh's African. Universities, repositories, medicine, math influencing Greece, Rome, African. Acts 7:22. Moses schooled Egyptian wisdom, African scholars, priests, intellects. Israel fled Egypt for haven, Abraham famine, Joseph rose second, Jacob family 400 years, Christ child from Herod. Egypt safety wisdom resources, not primitive bias. Cush's might, and Sheba's queen. Biblical Ethiopia Cush, potent kingdom 2500 BCE. 2 Chronicles 12, Zerah Cushite versus Judah, with million troops 300 chariots, vast organized affluent force. Isaiah 18, Cush whirring wings, tall smooth-skinned, feared mighty conqueror. Superpower, not fringe. 1 Kings 10, Sheba queen, Ethiopia Yemen 10th BCE, visited Solomon with gold, spices, stones caravan. Posed riddles. Intelligent, wealthy ruler equaling Israel's wisest king. Black woman peer engaging. 1st century African faith. New Testament. Acts 8, Ethiopian eunuch, early Gentile convert. Candace Queen's treasurer. Jerusalem worshipping, Isaiah reading, instant believer baptized, returned Ethiopia. Tradition. Broad faith 1st century, not colonial. Africans church original. Augustine, Tertullian North African, Athanasius Alexandrian. Greatest church minds, African. Art as tool. Shift occurred, Christianity Roman official, European spread, biblical visuals altered. Italian Renaissance painted Christ, Mary, disciples, European white, local models. Images standardized. Initially innocuous, but exploration, colonization, conquest made images functional. White Jesus, elect, heroes, divine dominance claim. Images propaganda control tools. Transatlantic trade and rationale. 15th century transatlantic bondage. Papal 1552-1555 bulls sanction non-Christian enslavement. Europeans abducted, about 12.5 million Africans, about 1.8 million perished in transit. Survivors sold, death labored plantations, brutalized, raped, dehumanized. Church, instead opposing, perpetuated. Divines invented Ham curse. Preachers claimed suffering divine. Master obedience, God obedience. Heaven reward, no earthly resistance. Not error, deliberate twist for economics. Sugar, tobacco, cotton riches on African labor. Bible abused for slave acceptance, owner righteousness. Verity's methodical burial. Post-legal abolition, deceptions persisted. Jim Crow 1872 to 1960s, segregated. Lynchings terrorized. Schools taught Africans history cultureless. Texts minimized bondage, slaves' content, civil war states' rights. Lies as fact generations. Truth suppressed. African texts mistranslated, ignored. African digs downplayed. Black challengers marginalized, silenced. Education, media, church perpetuated white superiority myth. Eternal rule deserved. Resistance crushed. 1968 Jane Elliott eye color exercise taught discrimination, traumatized and raged. Threats, exile as traitor. Exposing oppression mechanics threatened regime. Church institutionally, denominations slavery split, Southern defending biblical, post-segregation backed, civil rights opposed, integration anti-God. Taught divine segregationist, scriptural deviation, pulpit preached. Education, texts glorified European, erased African. Columbus discovered, inhabited America. Trade minimized. Reconstruction failure, black power premature. Black innovators, scientists, artists, leaders omitted. Legal, post-slavery, black criminalizing laws. Vagrancy arrested unemployed blacks, convict leased plantations, renamed bondage. Redlining 1932-1962, barred black home buys. Biased lending starved black firms. Voter curbs blocked power. Drug war, harsher crack, black versus powder, white sentences, same substance. Incarceration, new Jim Crow, millions rights strict. Media entertainment, century plus black portrayals, criminals, servants, buffoons, invisible. Black history, white savior fitted. Today, biblical films, white cast, Near Eastern African roles. 2014 Exodus, Christian Bale Moses, Joel Egerton Ramses, White Egyptians. Absurd, embedded lie depth. Divine academic prejudice. Seminaries translation groups obscured African. Cush, translated variably, vague. Moses' Cushite foreign, race hidden. God-defending color passages skipped. Not accident. Systematic truth suppression for power. Worked 500 years. Survivor's heritage, but unanticipated. Oppressed resilience. Slaves clung Psalm 68:31 promise. Black church resistance, liberation core. Black scholars archived, translated, unearthed truth. Generation rejecting lies, rises. Now pivotal. Your true self, not told you, but God declared. If enslaved African's descendant,